Hello and welcome to Banking Transform, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Marous, founder and CEO of the Digital Banking Report and co-publisher of the Financial Brand. A strong web presence isn't just an advantage. It's essential for survival and growth. In today's competitive marketplace, a powerful digital footprint can mean the difference between thriving and merely surviving. Understanding how to optimize your digital presence is crucial, whether you want to increase brand awareness, drive engagement, or boost conversions. In this episode of Banking Transform, we are joined by Anil Aggarwal, the CEO of Milestone. Anil dives deep into the strategies and principles behind building a commanding digital web presence, from content creation to audience engagement to measuring and adopting changing technologies. He shares the key elements of a successful online strategy. Anil will also share ways financial institutions of all sizes can go beyond using their website for brand building to creating new business opportunities. Traditional banking websites are often designed as mere digital brochures, and they fail to capture the sophisticated needs of the modern consumer who expects personalized experiences, seamless transactions, and real-time financial insights. Banks can now convert casual visitors into loyal customers by completely rebuilding their digital presence with advanced features like AI-powered product recommendations, interactive financial planning tools, and customized content delivery. So Neil, welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about how Milestone helps financial institutions strengthen their digital presence?
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, and I'm very excited to be on this show. I'm Anil Aggarwal, CEO of Milestone. Milestone is marketing technology provider as well as marketing services provider. And we work in many different verticals, finance being one of the key verticals that we work in. And what our platform does is essentially it brings in all the tools that any financial institution, banks or mortgage lenders or any location-based business needs to build out their full digital presence. That includes their website, their visibility in the local listings profile, any of the AI tools and analytics. So we bring the full spectrum there. The biggest thing that differentiates us from a lot of other companies in similar space is, Jim, what we're doing is focusing on how do we actually make this website an Amazon equivalent for the bank. How does this site actually produce money? So this is not just a website, and you rightly said, like, people do a lot of brochure sites. And really what we're after is, how do you get the site to make money for the banks? And that's what we excel at, and the money can come in many different ways, whether you're looking for more account openings, or you're looking for more deposits, or you're looking for more mortgage lending applications, or you're looking for more credit card sales. So that's really what we excel at.
Well, it's interesting, as I mentioned in the introduction, many financial institutions have not updated their websites for years. Maybe they've made little tweaks here and there if a new product's introduced, but the overall foundation has been more of a broadcast branding element rather than an interactive digital tool. What fundamental elements make up a true, effective digital presence in today's marketplace? So, what should organizations focus on for a better digital customer experience?
That's a great question, Jim. One of the biggest things that we find all the chief marketing officers of different banks and CEOs is really shifting from information-based tool, like a website that just gives you information, into a platform that will actually do business development, lead generation, and drive revenue for them. So we see this as a very fundamental shift. I think it really started after COVID, and then it's just continued to accelerate, and banks are increasingly relying and redoing their websites to make sure that they do, the site actually generates revenue. So now, if you think of, in my view, a lot of people think it's all very complex. I think it's actually very straightforward. There are two or three components to it. One is making sure that, when you're building your digital presence, when you're building your website, how do people find you, right? They can find you from advertising, which is fantastic, but you also need to make sure that the foundationally you're set up so that you're maximizing the organic and the local listings and all of that revenue that would come from the website. So how do they find you? And once they find you, what is the digital experience you're delivering, right? Like how personalized. If I happen to have expressed an interest in one of your mortgage products, either by browsing to that page or because I clicked on your mortgage ad, then how do you actually deliver that personalized experience for me so that I can actually buy that product? I think so. Those are the two things that we hone in on. Now, within those, it starts getting it starts getting sophisticated. So, like in terms of, for example, right now, the biggest thing is making sure that your website is optimized for search. But one thing which is very interesting, Jim, what we've seen in the last 2 3 months is an increasing amount of traffic from chat engines, sorry, AI engines. So we're seeing more and more traffic from ChatGPT. We're seeing traffic from Perplexity, and I don't think any of the vertical. It doesn't matter whether banking or any other vertical. I don't think most organizations are set up for attracting that traffic or are making sure that the content and their website is optimized for that. And that is going to be a major disruption here. That the source of business is going to be more than just Google. So you need to optimize your site for search engines, which is also becoming very AI driven. So Google, Bing, and then you need to make sure that the same content can be indexed by these AI engines. I would say that's a very important area that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying really is, as opposed to simply having a good experience when you're on the website, actually moving it from being a cost center to being a revenue generator, which is a really new thought process from the perspective of what a website was meant to do. We always hope that the consumer or the prospect would come to the website, would find what they would need, and would do all the action. What's happening now is the websites are actually helping prompt you to not only where you should go, but how to get to the place you want to achieve and where the financial institution wants to generate new business. So what are some specifics that organizations are doing on their websites and through digital marketing to drive leads? And you mentioned earlier, creating more Amazon-like shopping experience. What are they doing specifically?
All right. Well, so let's talk about, let's break it up into two components. So in terms of technology on the side, and it's technology, but it translates to user experience. How quickly, and the benchmark is mobile. So you want to make sure mobile experience is perfect, and then you translate that to desktop. But making sure that the speed of the site is really good, right? It loads really fast. It's a stable website. That user experience is very important. And search engines reward you for that. So not only when you do that, not only will the consumers be happy, but actually you're going to get found more because the search engines are measuring that, how quickly the site loads, whether people just jump away because your site didn't load, or, or the site kept moving while you were on the phone. So there is a speed of the site is very important. The second thing that is very important is, deploying structured data. So once you have your content, deploying all kinds of structured data so that people can, search engines can understand the content you have, the context of the content. And we'll touch a little bit more on structured data later on. But so once you've done all of this and people are actually getting to your site, then it comes down to the technology is only facilitating the engine to find your content. The key component of your site is the content. how you've actually set up the content, what are you talking about, have you made it useful for the consumer. So I'll give a very simple example. If you're interested in a mortgage, what we found is majority of the home buyers are younger people who've never taken a loan before and have no idea what that process looks like of buying a house. So a very good quality content piece on a mortgage section of your site is actually how to buy a house. What are the different steps and the transactions? And we've seen that consumers really consume that kind of content. So if you now combine what I just said, the other could be rate calculators. How do you figure out what my price would be? Or the rate calculators. Typically, these are things that the agents would show you or mortgage brokers would show you. But if you can include some of these tools on your website, it creates for a very good experience. And you combine this with technology and you mark it up with structured data. Now what you're happening is, as a young married couple who's looking for a new house, and I get to your site, not only am I informing them that I have a mortgage product, but I'm actually educating them on the whole process. And that's really what search engines want. That's what consumers want. And all of this technology, so there are different tools. There's calculators, there's interactive tools. The biggest thing that we're working on is AI agents, where the website is actually going to talk to you instead of you relying on the website and you navigating based on the questions or interest. The website is going to guide you to where to go. So that's what we see. And I think actually it's very exciting what's going to happen. The information is going to become more readily available. AI is going to revolutionize some of the content creation and what's happening on these sites.
So when you look at what organizations, you come in and you see an organization and you almost are sure there's certain things, especially in financial services, that are going to be wrong, that organizations haven't updated things or haven't done right. So what are some of the most critical mistakes you see as financial institutions are trying to make their online presence more known, and how can those be corrected?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I see, Jim, is most of the sites are built as brochure sites. So they were built between even more recent ones, but a lot of them, anything that was built 3 to 5 years ago is built like a brochure. They spend money on advertising to draw the people to the site, but that advertising also becomes expensive if the user experience on the site is not good. Google will rank, your cost per click goes up, your overall advertising expense is also higher. So the biggest thing that I see is that technology-wise, they're not built on the platform that will actually drive organic traffic. You have to spend a lot of money. And then the content, once you come to the website, they have different sections and they have different content pieces. But has the thought been put into the customer journey like Amazon does, right? Like Amazon has it right. It's like you buy one product, they make sure they show you 10 others that you should need because you bought this, and they get you to buy those. And I'm thankful for that, because I do need some of those things genuinely, right? Like if I bought one of these things, this other one is very preferred or needed. So I think the biggest thing is the merchandising, the ability to turn the website into e-commerce is what we see lacking. That's where we're seeing a lot of success. The conversations with CEOs of banks and credit unions, that they have a very high interest in making these websites produce money for them rather than being just highway billboards, right? Which is fine. I mean, also serves a purpose. So everything has a purpose, but really, how do you make this an interactive engine?
It's interesting, Anil, when you talk about a mobile platform, it's very personalized in many cases. It's not perfect, but it's more personalized than a website usually is. But we're seeing more and more organizations building websites that quickly personalize the experience as opposed to simply being the same for every single person that comes to the website. So what role does content strategy play, and how do you end up personalizing the content based on the person who's going on the site, especially those who may not already be customers. So how do you work with prospects versus customers, and how does content strategy help you personalize the experience so it's different if I went to it or if my wife went to it or somebody else?
That's a great question. So there are, three categories of personalization, Jim. Like you can personalize the user experience for any consumer based on three things. One is their location, right? If they're, if I'm sitting in New York and browsing your site in San Francisco, that's a different consumer versus if I'm sitting in San Francisco, 2 miles from your bank and browsing your site, right? And so you can customize the behavior for location. You can customize for customer intent or consumer intent. And I think that's the most effective one that I find, right? And what customers actually give you a lot of signals. So if I went to your bank site and I actually spent a lot of time browsing through your mortgage lending section, that's a clear indicator that I'm interested in getting a mortgage. Right. And now what we're seeing, some of the savvier organizations who are doing that a lot, is now I can navigate, as the consumer navigates through your website or goes away and comes back in a few days, I can navigate there. I can tailor the experience towards a mortgage lending application. You can change the images on the homepage. You can change the different text. You can throw in an offer. So there's all these things that you can do. And, interestingly, what we're seeing is the conversion double, actually. So the typical thing is that 30-40% increase. We're actually seeing for the campaigns that it's 80 to 110% increase. So it's pretty substantial. Because the customer is actually communicating the intent and you're just acting on that intent. Now, if they clicked on a certain ad or whether they clicked or they browsed certain sections of your website. The third category of personalization, which is a little tricky because it gets into privacy and everything, is based on your user profile. So if you're logged into, but for that, I have to detect if I have your user profile because you've shared that with me, saying that, you just got married and you have all these things, that you're renting a home, and I know that profile and I detect that, I know that you're going to be in the market for a house at some point, or you're going to be, or if you're just freshly graduating out of college, you'll be in the market for opening a bank account. So there are different ways of personalizing. It is the future. All the search engines, everybody is doing that. The banks will have to do it. I think we have to do it in a way that it's non-intrusive and it doesn't intrude into people's privacy. But we're seeing a lot of instances of that happening right now in terms of personalization.
I think what's interesting too is that websites today don't really wait for me to push the buttons to go where I want to go. It really prompts you to go. So it basically, through questions and other things, it customizes and personalizes what I see based on who I am, what I've done, how I travel throughout the site, with many pages being invisible unless you go there. And that really makes it so that every experience is different for every consumer. It also makes it so the consumer engages more based on wanting to be there as opposed to simply searching for things. So, my boss in sales used to say, nothing happens unless you measure results. How do companies effectively measure and optimize not only their digital presence, but the results of their efforts when it comes to building a better interactive digital website?
Yeah, great question. So there is a very simple measurement of what's happening on your website. So I'll categorize measurement in two areas, and I think both are very important. Most companies will do one of them; they don't do the second one. The first one, I'll start with what most people don't do, is constantly measure the health of their website. right? Because they feel like they built it well and it's sitting there. But what people have to realize is the standards or the lens with which search engines judge the sites, and now with the AI engines, they AI engines have very tight crawler budgets, right? So they're judging the content and the sites with a very different lens. And so what you have to do is really put in some tools to measure the effectiveness or health of your site, like how competitive you are versus your competitors on speed and keywords and so on and so forth. So that's one area that we spend a lot of time. We actually enable that as a standard uh, ability, because if the website is not healthy, it will have a direct impact on what you're about to now measure,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of organizations do. Now, what typically I would measure is like the traffic, and you can get very deep, right? Where the traffic is coming from, what are the referral sources, what is being effective, which campaigns worked, which didn't work, and the criteria. So what I recommend to people is always have a goal, right? Whether I want to increase this much of deposits. In the end, it has to be a business goal. It has to be increase in deposits, increase in uh, mortgage applications, or one of the banks that we worked with, they wanted to sell more insurance, and we of course we ended up selling a lot of insurance, but we had to change the experience on the pages to make that happen. So defining an end business goal, measuring that, how many leads you're getting, tying it to actual, if you can actually tie it to the actual performance at the bank, that's even better, which I would say about half of our customers are able to do, and the other half are still, they don't have processes to do that. And then, but still, nevertheless, looking at how many leads you got and how many online account signups you got. Um, and then you can keep getting more and more up funnel, which is looking into the traffic, your visibility, your impressions. So that's what we do, Jim. These are the areas that we see customers mostly interested
Yeah, it's interesting. We see in our business, in the content business, that ChatGPT and AI and generative AI are changing the way that search happens, that it's really impacting the way that traffic sees our site. How can financial institutions make it so that even as these new tools come into use, that their organization is going to get a good positioning for SEO traffic and things of this nature? How is this changing the business, but how are you adjusting websites so that they get featured?
in. It's a great question, Jim, because I think this is the biggest disruption that's happened in the digital domain in the last
Yeah.
15 years, 20 years. Because for the last 15, 20 years, it's been just a Google show. And I think, and Google is fantastic. So this is not about Google, but I think what it is that there's going to be other channels other than Google that is going to provide the data. I mean, when I say Google, I was talking about search, so Google being. So the biggest thing for the AI agents is that these AI agents, when they crawl your website, their budget is very limited. The GPU cost thing that is causing the Nvidia stock to go through the roof. So they're very, very limited on processing and compute resources. They want to make sure that they're very efficient. So one of the things that you can do on your site is make sure that you mark up all your content with structured data. So which helps it really just helps the engine understand the content more efficiently, more quickly. They don't have to interpret all the content. They can grab the structured data to figure out what content you have. So that's one of the key things that you could do. The second is the quality of the content, because again, the resources are very limited. So they want to make sure they're picking up high quality content, FAQ type of content, uh, any content that is useful for the same criteria, which is for Google and other engines. Like, is this content going to help the consumer have a better experience, whether on their decision making or whether on their process of buying and experiencing and learning. So the quality of content, structured data, how fast your site is, so that the crawlers can crawl it very quickly. And then the last thing that is just in the search ecosystem, in local listings and other places. I don't know if you saw last week that Foursquare ChatGPT announced that they're going to pick up all the location information from Foursquare. So you got to make sure your information is in Foursquare so that it can be grabbed on. You can show up in ChatGPT. So those are the few things that we're doing. We're seeing a very interesting phenomena, Jim. We're seeing in the last 4 months, the traffic from the AI engines on our sites has doubled every month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if it keeps that trend, it'll become substantial by sometime in Q4, Q3 of next year.
So it's interesting. It's very clear from our discussion that you can't simply build a website, even with a company like Milestone, and expect it to just be good forever. In other words, oh, good, we fixed everything. We don't have to look at this for a while. With your clients, it's obviously clear that you have to stay engaged because the marketplace outside of the company's website is changing so quickly. You have to adjust. I mean, I know at a financial brand, we have to adjust continually because things are impacted. It used to be just you only had to pay attention to the Google algorithm. Now you got to look at every algorithm and say, what do I have to do as a company to become more present when somebody's searching for something? So let's say I'm a small, mid-sized financial institution, and I know I got to fix my website. How do I engage with your company? And more importantly, how do you work with me to build a better website? Number one, what kind of investigation do you do? What types of things are things that I have to do as a financial institution on my side to make it so you can do better? And then, I'm going to put you on the spot here, in a normal situation, which is never normal, how long does it take to get something up and running that's going to be impactful? It may not be final, but you're going to be the lowest hanging fruits can be accessible.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm going to use instead of talking in theoretical, I'll use a example that we recently did. We built out the site for One Nevada Credit Union, and that's a little bit on the larger side. They have about 21 branches, and they're the largest bank, credit union bank in the Las Vegas, Nevada area. But they had 10 different sites for different elements. And what we said is we don't need 10 sites because, a lot of people think they'll build a site for this. What they don't think through is after building the site, how are they going to bring people to that site? So It costs money to bring people. So having 10 sites built out is not the problem. The problem is how to actually draw people to the site, right? So it costs money. So that's why we decided that we're going to consolidate all of those sites into a single site.
Yep.
Fairly sophisticated site. And then how we work with them is we help them build out the site. So one unique characteristic for us is like I mentioned earlier, we're an agency and we are a MarTech platform. So we can actually do the agency services. We did the entire design process of creating the personas, figuring out what the personas wanted, planning the customer journeys for each of the persona, for each of the product types. If you wanted to learn more about credit cards, what journey are we going to take you through? Then, we in that particular case, we also actually created the content. So we did the full content creation, design, customer journeys, the user experience flows. And then once we get into the actual production, that's where the platform comes in. So all the technology, the speed, the structured data, the testing across multiple platforms. So we basically built the full experience for them. A project of that project was very large. I would say that most financial institutions should plan between 2 to 4 months.
And it's nice because that means that organizations then can relatively quickly see the results of what they've done because you're building it in sometimes a piecemeal, but a growing fashion. Plus, one thing that's really come out of this conversation with you is, this process is never done because the world's changing so much on the outside. You're testing things as you go along. And because you do so much work in the financial services industry, it makes it so every one of your clients benefits from every test you're doing at any other client from the standpoint of how things work, how things integrate, how do you bring human and digital in together within a website experience. So that's interesting to learn that. And, with regard to the human versus digital aspect, we would have loved to have thought that this all could go digital and we could hands off and not get, involved very much. But the reality is that's not reality. And that we're seeing organizations do even better when they can integrate the human and digital perspective of what they do. How are you seeing the best organizations integrating human plus digital?
So, what I find is that, and, this is even from my personal life, right? Like, I don't want full digital experience. I want to know everything possible, and then I still want to go talk to somebody. But that's me. I think there's different kinds of people. Some of the younger people they're just happy signing on. But what we're seeing is almost a resurgence of the number of branches. We're seeing a lot of, I think there is pressure to, make them more efficient and streamlined. But we are seeing a lot of the customers we work with hone in on the branches, and we're seeing a substantial amount of traffic. We can actually directly track how much traffic is being driven to those because of what we do. The one of the data points that we track is how many people are seeking directions to the branches. So we're seeing a lot of people flow in. Good organizations do a very healthy mix. So you need to have your digital needs to be a reflection, almost like it's an alternate, it's two parallel paths, but you want to make sure that you're not pushing one way or the other. You're giving consumer the choice. That's what we're seeing a lot of. I think there was a couple of years ago, there was a lot of push to move full digital, and we've seen a lot of traffic come into branches now.
Yep.
And not just in banks, by the way. We're seeing that in other areas as well. People are actually wanting to go into the stores, which is interesting, which is sort of counter to what we all think.
So as a final question, Neil, how do you see the whole business of websites and digital interactions and digital presence changing over the next 3 years? What do you see on the horizon that you're already working on so that you'll be ready when the marketplace says they're ready?
I think the biggest change that I see, Jim, happening is AI is going to disrupt everything. And AI in multiple places.
Yep.
So AI and how you get discovered, right? Are you ready for your content to get discovered in ChatGPT? Because people are going to talk to ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the best bank to to get a mortgage loan near me, right? That's a question that if you ask ChatGPT, you want to make sure that you're featured in that answer. And that's not an easy task, right? You have to start from where you started in Google and other places 20 years ago. So I see AI in discovery. I see AI in content creation. How do you actually generate a lot of content which is human-like, but it's still generated by the machine? The other big area that we're seeing is images and videos. They're going to become very important in the next 3 years. Yep. So utilizing short videos, optimizing them, making sure search engines understand, getting them into your site, I think is a very big area of investment for us. We're spending a lot of time with our customers in banking segment and other segments on images and videos. We see again, then in terms of being able to measure, predict results, we're going to see a proliferation of artificial intelligence into a lot of different areas. That would be the biggest disruption that I see. I do want to, before we wrap up, I've talked about all of these things that you can do, but I do want to talk about, we talked a little bit about One Nevada Credit Union, and I sort of want to give you their idea of the customer journey of what we're doing, because it's exactly answers the question that you're asking, how do I keep moving forward? Yeah. So we started with consolidating 10 sites, putting it into one. The results were beyond phenomenal. They saw a 20% increase in mortgage loan applications. They saw an increase in deposits, Jim. In a market where everybody in their market was going down, they actually saw a 5% increase in deposits. So reverse, that's huge money. So all of that they got, And now we're on to the next generation. We are looking at how to personalize. We are looking at how to actually make the branch pages and other pages more sophisticated, more dynamic. So it's a constant process. Good organizations constantly budget for some things every year. And now we're also working on AI agents for them. So it's just a whole process. So it exactly is what you just said. It's not a, finish it and
it's not a project. It's not a project. It's a process. And, it's very interesting because, I come from more than 4 decades of banking experience. And the website was always I got to keep on updating. And, you put what you end up doing was putting more pages in as opposed to making it a better website. You end up having brochureware. And what's very interesting today is, and it's interesting in talking to you, is that we don't talk about websites all that much, but there's so much potential. And as I said earlier in the podcast, moving it from a cost center to a revenue center is a big deal, because what happens is, I know from your side of the business, the more you can make it so that a financial institution can make money off their website, the more budget that becomes available to continually enhance the business. So it's self-serving, but the bottom line is, it's kind of like the splitting of the profits. It's one of these things you go, hey, we can bring this much money of new business into your financial institution if you do this, this, and this, which will help fund the next stage of revolution in the website. And I think it's important to recognize, too, because of the kind of business that you do. I'm going to give a number, and it's probably not right, but who's going to know what the actual difference is? But about 80% of what you provide can be very similar from financial institution to financial institution. It's just getting the basics right that aren't currently right. It's that 20% that really pushes it even further and makes it so it's specific to the financial institution. So it's not like, if you worked with 2 organizations across the street, you'd be able to know that, because the foundation is what's similar, but not the way it presents itself. But I think we get too passive when we look at improving our websites. We keep on talking about the mobile experience. Well, the mobile experience many times is part of the website experience, because when I visit a website, it's through my mobile device. It's not through my computer in most cases. But I think this is really exciting. And I look forward to, discussing with you again what the advancements on the AI agents is, because we've had a couple interviews with people that have talked about AI agents. What's interesting is it kind of works against what financial institutions feel comfortable with, which is making recommendations without all the T's crossed and I's dotted. But the reality is there's no risk in that. There's no risk when Uber tells me to possibly are you interested in this, or this, or when Amazon puts recommendations. There's no risk there because they've already built the trust. But as we build better websites that provide more tools for a customer to get to their answer, and maybe not even the answer they were looking for initially, but to a better solution, you've built the trust, so you have more leverage in how to provide that heavier level of personalization that the customer will actually want as opposed to being afraid of. Anil, really appreciate your time. It's been great talking to you and learning about Milestone. And I think, it's interesting because you made it clear that, organizations of every size can benefit from what you're doing in the marketplace. And if you can't do it all now, at least get started, because the process of evolution won't stop. So thank you very much, Anil.
Thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure, like always.
Thanks for listening to Banking Transformed, the winner of 3 international awards for podcast excellence. If you enjoyed today's interview, please give our show a 5-star rating. Also, be sure to read my recent articles on the financial brand and check out our research on the digital banking report. This has been a production of the Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Haslage, audio engineer, Chris Fafalius, and video producer, Will Pritz. I'm your host, Jim Marous. Until next time, remember, a website can no longer just be an online brand builder. It must be the workhorse for new business development.